Hello, and welcome to my podcast, Good Grief. My name is Dr. Christine Malone, and in this podcast, we talk about trauma, tragedy, and survival. In each episode, I will interview someone that has gone through grief in some way, and we will discuss the impact it has had on their life. By sharing these stories, we hope that others won't feel alone should they be going through similar situations. Enjoy. Okay, listeners, thank you so much for joining me today for my podcast. I have a very interesting guest that I am looking forward to chatting with for this episode. So, Ashmeeta, if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and things you're involved in.
Sure. Hi, Christine. My name is Ashmeeta Madhav. I am a resilience and grief support advocate, an educator, an entrepreneur, an author, but most of all, I consider myself a lifelong learner. And the reason I say this is because I've encountered many life-changing experiences from my early 20s, things like miscarriage, rejection. Then my mom passed away when I was in my 30s. Um, Later in 2019, my husband passed away after struggling with a terminal illness, pancreatic cancer. And about a year and a half ago, my dad unexpectedly passed away.
I'm sorry to hear
So
that.
thank you. So I've at every single time I had this experience, I felt real intense emotions and real intense grief. And I felt so stuck and lost. And I just didn't like the way I was feeling, the way this experience that I've experienced, how it was making me feel, that stuck feeling and just not knowing where to turn, who to turn to, what to do. So I ventured out onto the path of self-discovery.
Mhm.
And through that, I've come to really appreciate how important personal growth is. And I also have come to understand the impact my thoughts have on shaping my reality.
So, how did
So
you get to that space? I mean, what was the trigger that said I need to change my thinking? I mean, what was it? Just you just woke up one day and said I need to do something, or was it just kind of a realization over time where it's like I'm not happy or whatever it might be, and I need to make some
um,
change?
it was a combination of a few things, but definitely a realization over time. But it was that whole feeling of feeling stuck that really kind of got me, made me feel. I'll give you an example. Like, I was married to my husband when he passed away. We were married for 23 years.
Mm.
In that 23 years, when you find yourself in a relationship, usually one person is good at certain aspects of running a family and another person is good at, so we kind of just settle into those
Those
spaces and
roles,
we
yeah.
have peace of mind that, okay, he's taking care of it, I don't need to worry about it, he keeps me posted of what's going on, and that's it, right? And then we were hit with this whole illness and he passed away, and here I am. What am I supposed to do? All I've ever known how to do was take care of my family and travel around because his job took us traveling around quite a bit. So when he passed away, things like the finances and the taxes, which was not my interest, I didn't really
Mm.
pay attention, not because I don't don't have the intelligence to do it, but I just wasn't
Wasn't
interested.
your role. Yeah,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, and then you hit that space. I know I also had a spouse that passed away where you are now holding two roles, right? So you've got,
Yes.
and you got to learn this new reality, right? And so not only how to do these different tasks, but how to take care of things that you wouldn't have needed to take care of, right? So it's kind of like, and did you have kids too at the time?
I did,
Yeah,
yes.
I did
At the
kids, so
time
yeah.
when my husband passed away, my youngest was 7, my
Oh,
middle guy was 14, and my oldest was 16, just
yeah.
graduated from high
You get
school.
to fill the role as both parents. And I know one of the things I want to talk to you about is helping children as through the grieving process. I do want to talk to you a little about that because I have some experience there too. I'd like to hear kind of
Mhm.
what you did with working with your kids. So you mentioned the miscarriage and the rejection. Tell us a little bit about that story and how that kind of panned out.
So this was a really unexpected thing that kind of happened. When I was around 23, I got married, and 6 weeks later, while I was in that 6 weeks that I was married, I ended up getting pregnant. But then about, yeah, I think it was 6 to 8 weeks later, I also received a summons one day saying that the individual that I was married to didn't want to be married anymore, and he decided that he wanted to have the marriage annulled. And there were no questions asked. I was not consulted, and it was just, "Don't talk to me. I don't want to know anything. This is over."
Did he know
So
about the miscarriage?
yes, he knew about the
Good.
miscarriage, but I tried to talk to him, and he refused to talk to me. So I don't know why. Where I know I don't have answers. All I
Uh-huh.
know is I had this experience. This happened to me. I felt like I was used, and I felt like I could not face the world ever again.
Yeah. At
And at
20,
that, in
20,
my
so
in my
young.
20s,
Yeah. Yeah.
really just starting off in life in the sense, right? Um, and at that point, I think my biggest support were my immediate family, which is
Mhm.
my mom, my dad, and my brother. I come from a
Right.
very tiny family, so that's it. Those were the three people that I relied on, and I heavily relied on my mom a lot.
Right.
More
Right.
than any, like I relied on all three of them, but my mom was the one that I became extra close to, and I sort of almost became dependent on her in so many ways because I
Right.
did not want to go back out into the world. I felt like I couldn't trust anybody. I felt like I couldn't even trust myself to make
Okay.
sort of have a relationship with another person because maybe I'm a bad judge of character. How
Right.
did I get myself into the situation in the first place?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty common, especially again, oh my God, at such a young age, because that's where you're just learning, how to navigate things in this world and to experience, two big losses, right? Boom, boom, after another there
Yeah,
is
yeah.
really is difficult. So you've moved from there. I know you mentioned having the loss of your parents and then your husband. So how have you, I know you mentioned this kind of self-discovery thing, but kind of what are some of the things that have helped you get to a point where you are, I like to use the word, healthy, happy, functioning human in our society after experiencing, some pretty traumatic losses?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a cough here.
That's okay.
Uh, so with that very first experience that I had, I started venturing out onto, trying to find ways that I could help myself because I realized that there wasn't, aside from my immediate family, there wasn't anybody else that I could really turn to. Well, I didn't feel I could turn to. So I did a lot of reading up on some authors like Louise Hay.
Mm,
Uh, Back then, that was a long time ago, Louise Hay. I read her book called You Can Heal Your Life, and then The Power Is Within You, those kind of things. So I learned about affirmations.
mm,
Um, I also did a whole bunch of workshops and things, anything that made sense to me at that time, and I felt that it was going to help me to understand myself better. I did it. I went
yeah,
down to different organizations that offered, meditation is something that is so different. Depends on which organization you go to. They all have a slight tweak to how they do it. They have their way of doing it. So transcendental meditation, and then I went on to a different type of where they focus on their breath, then type of meditation where you focus on just saying the same affirmation in your mind, those kind of things. Um, and then subliminal tapes as well, is something that I discovered as well at the time. And as I was doing all of this, there's one thing that I noticed about myself is that I felt, because of the experiences that I had, I felt that I was not meant to have certain happiness or certain things in my life because these are why does this happen to me and doesn't happen to anybody else? But that in itself is a limiting belief and a limiting way of thinking. So
yeah,
I learned that over time, and as I kept, delving into various different different things, as I learned over time about habits, how habits are formed, how limited beliefs are formed, how your brain works with thoughts that enter your mind. Where do those thoughts come from in the first place? I didn't ask for this thought. Where did it come from? I did, Um, so today, sometimes, especially when you have a really crazy experience where, things have just totally knocked you off your feet, and then, um, oh, I'm a widow. I should behave in this way. And then I questioned that thought and I'm like, okay, where did this thought come from? Do I
right.
really believe this thought? Do I really believe that I need to be behaving in a specific way because my husband died? I did not, I mean, it might sound a bit I hope to say this, I don't want to say this in a rude way, but I did not kill my husband. I didn't ask for him to die.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We had dreams of wanting to live till we were older and, tour the whole of the USA. That's what we wanted to do. That was our retirement plans. We did not make accommodations for this to happen.
Right. Wasn't the plan. Yeah.
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 So, and now I find myself in this situation and I'm like, what? I'm thinking these thoughts. Where are they coming from? I don't believe that. I don't believe this thought, but it's in my head.
Right.
And the more I keep thinking it, I noticed the more power and momentum it gets in my mind. And before you know it, it becomes so strong that I then actually do start believing it.
Mm-hmm.
I really have become a firm believer that any thought that enters my mind, I need to be intentional with. I need to, I need to question it
Mm-hmm.
and
It
decide
has
whether I
power.
want
Yeah, it
to.
has power over you.
It
Yeah.
does have
Yeah.
power. I need to decide whether I want to accept that or not. It's like a visitor. I will accept you. I will welcome you, but then
Mhm.
I'm going to decide whether you're worthy to be in here or not.
Or to
And
come back. Yep.
or don't come back exactly, and then we're going to deal with it accordingly, because this life is so precious, and what we make out of it is so 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 important. That story that's going to be told about you when you're no more is
Right.
something that you are creating right now. So how do
Yeah.
you want that story to be told?
Yeah. I call it the legacy. Yeah. So
Yeah.
for our listeners that don't know much about meditation, and I'm going to guess there's a few of them out there. I know I didn't until I started meditating myself. Tell us a bit about, not necessarily a type of meditation, but just what meditation, what benefits does it bring to your life? What have you found with, this is a daily meditation, so I'm guessing you do daily meditations. Just kind of what does that bring for you? Why do you do it?
Okay, so for me, meditation actually is a way to go within, to understand my thoughts, to understand the different sensations that I'm having inside of my body, and to calm myself, to be able to calm myself. I noticed that the more I meditate, I am able to control myself so much better in uh, any adverse situation or experience that I have. I can take a step back and say, okay, I see this has happened. What do I need to do? And deal with it in a more calmer fashion. And that has come to me over time as I have just just sat with myself. I've learned so much about myself through meditation. Um, Building that relationship with yourself is what you get out of meditation as well.
Right.
And I think having a relationship with yourself is so, 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 it's like the most important thing that every human being needs to have. If you can have a relationship with yourself and be your own best friend first, and know what it feels like to depend on yourself and be able to deliver, you already have a standard then that you are holding in yourself. So when you finally go out there and are dealing with another human being, it doesn't matter what they have, you have your standard, because you know what it feels like to depend on somebody. You know what your expectations are when you feel you need to depend on somebody.
Yeah.
So
No,
you'll see yourself from getting into relationships as well then that you necessarily don't need to be in.
yeah, and it goes back to what your earlier comment about maybe you didn't know how to pick the right people or something. So kind of,
Mm.
learning who you are and what you need and what makes you happy and well adjusted and so on. Very helpful before going out there and trying to find somebody else to add to the mix, that's for sure. So you mentioned about kind of like your kids when your spouse died. So kind of what were some of the things that you did to really kind of help them? I know I've had to deal with that myself. My children were only 2 and 4 when their father died. But how did you kind of go through that? How do you know where to meet them where they are?
And that's exactly what I did. I met them where they were. My 7-year-old, developmentally, for a 7-year-old to understand what losing a parent or losing somebody you love, for them, it's very different because, like, developmentally, basically, their mind is not developed to that point where they can understand what this actually means, this
Right.
losing a parent, what it means. Whereas for my 14 and 16-year-old, it was very different. And I had to meet each one of them exactly where they were, because both my older kids are boys, and their personality is such that they prefer, they're not very expressive. So
Mm.
they wouldn't just say, oh, like express what they're feeling. So the approach that I used with them was more to, I always gave them the facts. We always gave them the facts, uh, as much as they were comfortable handling.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping that communication channel open with them and talking to them about what was happening as it was happening on a more real time kind of basis. So this is what's happened. This is what the doctors are saying. This is what this could mean. Do you have any questions? How do you feel about it? This is a really crazy time. I am not saying that I know it all. I'm your
Right.
parent. I'm here for you. We're going to walk this path together. I don't know it all, but I do know enough. I I do know enough to know that I can help you as
Yeah.
much as I can. And
Yeah.
if we find ourselves in a situation where I cannot help you, we can go for counseling. They are professionals who have studied specifically for grief counseling.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
can help. My boys were not interested in. I found that avenue for them, offered it to them, but they were not interested in that at all. Um, so it was very, very important for me to meet them where they were and give them what they need. And I allowed them to show me what they need. So I kind of reverse engineered it in a sense.
Yeah.
My oldest took to sport. He's still a runner. He cross country, he does a lot of running. So that was something that helped him a lot. And him and his team. So he kind of grew closer to his team, and he did a lot of running and things like that. My middle guy was into what was this, games, video games. So he was a little bit of my concern, because a bit more concerned, because it's just him and a video game.
Mm.
That kind of had me. So with him, I had to do frequent checks all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but he kept to himself. He kind of, everybody, all four of us, I found, had gone into our own little comfortable spaces where we felt comfortable and safe.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly over time, over the months, we kept this going, the communication, all of that. But I noticed over the months, it was definitely more than a year. In the second child's case, over 2 years before he actually started feeling comfortable talking about things.
Yeah.
And I was comfortable sooner. So I would talk about their dad all the time or say something, and they would hear me, but they won't make any comment, and they'll just walk away.
Yeah.
So I had to be respectful of that as well. So I
That's an
kept this
important
going.
point. That's an extremely important point. So I think one of the things I would say that I would totally agree with you is let the kids know that you're willing to talk to them about anything. They can talk to you about anything. They can talk to you about how they feel,
Mhm.
how, questions they have, right? Whatever that might be. And again, whatever's age appropriate, depending on how, how old they are at the time. And to your last point, to not force it, right? Not say, well, we're going to talk about dad tonight. Well, they don't want to talk about dad tonight. We're not talking about dad tonight, but when you're ready, we'll talk about dad. When you want to, whatever. I know my kids, because they were so young when their dad passed away, that when they got older, they'd ask me questions about him. Well, what was he like for this and that and the next thing? Because
Yeah.
they didn't remember some of those things. They weren't old enough. And so I was always wanted to make sure, I'm here. I'll answer any questions you have. You let me know when you have them and what your questions are. Not going to force anything on you, but what do you want? What can I help you with? And so on. So yeah, I think
Yes.
that as a parent, especially because we want to do everything for our kids. We don't want our kids in pain. We don't want our kids suffering and so on. It's so hard when you can't prevent these things from happening to them. So talk to me a bit about your book. I know you wrote a book. So tell me what your book's about, kind of why were you thinking you wanted to write the book? I mean, what was the impetus behind that?
Okay, sure. So the name of my book is called What's Your Story? Number one way to creating a new reality with your thinking. And the reason I wrote the book was I had come across quite a few people, actually close friends as well, that it's funny how my husband passed away, and then suddenly other people around me are not too far from me are also experiencing some, similar kind of situations. And the one day I was actually just sitting and thinking, and I thought, well, maybe I should put this all, whatever I have found and whatever I'm learning, whatever I am trying to help myself, put it down in writing so that it could help others, at least inspire them, give them that hope and that inspiration and motivation to want to try for themselves and, go forward. And because at the end of the day, an experience is just an experience. What we learn from the experience and take away from the experience helps us to grow, but the experience is not me. I am not this experience. Whatever I've experienced in my life is not me. As soon as I start believing that my experience is me, is when I am actually limiting myself and
Yeah.
stopping myself from living.
So who's your demographic? Who would buy your book? Why would they be interested in your book?
Honestly speaking, I think anybody who's experienced any sort of loss, it doesn't necessarily have to be death, any sort of loss, because in my book, I talk about your mind and your thoughts and how you can work with your thoughts to help yourself. The book is geared more towards helping people to providing tools and giving them sort of a kickstart into,
Mm.
okay, I'm not stuck. I don't need to be stuck. I can, get out there and try some of these things and see what works, what doesn't work, and then just move from there. It's about empowering and evolving.
Ah, great. Well, we will be putting a link to your book when this podcast airs, so listeners can take a look and pick up a copy. Now, talk to me now. We were talking a little bit before we started recording about your what you do in the summer with your activities with kids programs and so on. So tell us a little bit about what you do with that.
Oh, sure. So with my husband, it all started actually so strangely, but my husband had pancreatic cancer, and with the amount of times I've been to hospitals and the kind of things that I've learned, I mean, he had a Pleurex catheter and he had all these kind of things. I learned so much,
Oh,
not intentionally, right? But I learned all of this because life had forced me to learn that. And when I came across this franchise called Little Medical School, it kind of resonated. It spoke to me, and so I decided that I was going to venture into that. And so I purchased the franchise, and I've been running these camps for the last 2, 3 years now. Um, and I partner with community centers. Most of my instructors are kids who are like second year college kids who are in the medical field or going into the medical field or interested in the medical field. Some of them are even kids that are getting an education degree or even, an acting degree. But the curriculum's been written by a doctor, and we cater for kids from 4 all the way up to 14 years old,
mhm.
teaching kids about health awareness, exposing them to different careers in the healthcare field. I also partner with doctors so that I can get real live doctors who have experience, working in different fields like veterinary science, and then the medical field, sports medicine, wilderness medicine. We have the doctor camp. Kids learn about all the different organs in the body. They have activities that are related to the different organs, and each camp kids go away with something. Like with the doctor camp, they go away with a real working stethoscope and they know how to use it.
Oh,
We teach
nice.
them how to use it. We teach them the importance of taking care of it. It's not a toy,
Mhm.
you know. Um, and it's close to my heart because of the kind of things that I have experienced with my husband. And I just feel it is so, so, so important for kids to learn from a really young age about their bodies, about how it works, um, why is it important to eat healthy, or why is it important to drink water, how important water is for your body.
Mm. Seems like such simple lessons, but I know for sure that not everybody knows these things, and what, especially if you teach them to kids, then they become lifelong habits, which is going to be better for, everyone, the world in general, for a healthier society, that's for sure.
And if it's coupled with an activity, a
Mm.
hands-on activity, then it's not just words that I'm throwing at them. They're actually doing an activity. We have a digestion activity that involves 6 kids. It's a group activity. We're talking to them. So each child assumes the role of a different part of your body that is involved in digestion, starting with the mouth.
Okay.
And excuse me, it is such a fun activity because we are talking about exactly where digestion starts.
Mhm.
Does digestion start in your stomach or does it start in your mouth?
Right, right.
Right? What is happening to this food as it is going through these different parts of your body? When it's in the intestines, it's not just passing through the intestines. There's some important work going
Yeah,
on there.
there is. Yeah.
Why do you need that momentum? You need that extra, you know, those kind
Yeah.
of things. So,
Now that sounds like a great
yeah.
lesson, like or program. I'm intrigued. I'm gonna have to look that up or provide us with a link so we can take a look and see what it is
So,
with that with those summer camps because I think that's a great. So and again, before we started recording, I made the point. I think it's great. Kids could learn about STEM careers and maybe go into healthcare themselves and so on, which is of course when they plan as we move forward. So. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we end? Any other, helpful things you think would be helpful to our listeners?
well, as far as like the whole grieving stance is concerned, in order to kind of feel like you can live again, a lot of forgiveness, gratitude, and journaling
Yeah,
are three things that I have found very, very helpful. And self-care, meaning making sure you're eating, making sure you're doing some form of moving your body.
right.
Some
Yeah,
form of it doesn't have to be cardio, but you need to make sure you move your body for a certain amount of time every day. It does something with those hormones, and it's not it, it you get more of those happy hormones building in your body
right.
instead of these sad ones when you're just sitting around and feeling sorry for yourself because this crazy thing happened to me and now my life is over, because that's how I felt that way too. I can relate to those feelings. I've had those feelings. And life is life is meant to be lived, and it doesn't matter what experience you have in life. I think it's tough, yes, but every human being has the resilience in them to be able to pick themselves up and start moving. And then as they're moving, that awareness will automatically come where they'll realize, I think I need more help. I've come to a point where I can help myself, but I need to find some professional help, somebody who would be able to help me and guide me. And I really do think that going to a counselor at that point where you know that you want the help and you need the help, especially like in the field of grief counseling, the grief counselor can actually help you. The help can be so much more effective and more helpful than just going because I lost somebody and now I need to go see a grief counselor.
Yeah, I think I would also make the point. I'm not sure if you would agree with me. That I think it'd be best if you find someone who actually does have experience with grief counseling. I know, again, some people are more comfortable talking about the topic than others, and I know counselors are all, they're educated in all the different things, but especially if you're looking for someone for kids, to find someone who really has some experience working with grief counseling and can help people address those issues because none of us grieves in the same way, right? And I mean, um, it's very personal and so on. So, taking care of yourself and all that, great. But some people need to be secluded. Some people want to be out. Some people want to do different things and to really, realize that those are okay things to do. If it's
So,
not, it's not harm, obviously, but if it's doing you well, it's good to have, someone who knows what to suggest, I guess is what I would say.
so just off the top of my head, I will tell you one that really helped me. It's called Grief Share, and they have that Grief Share at if you go, it's griefshare.org, I believe is the website. And once you go on there, you'll find it. It's all over the country, and they
Mhm.
have one specifically for loss of a spouse.
Okay.
And then they have another one that's just grief share. They
Right.
have six to I think 6 or 12 week program. Once a week you meet online or in person, and each week you're covering a different aspect of how you're feeling through grief. Especially where for I wish I had known about this when my mom died, because I didn't know anything about, and I didn't, I just figured things out on my own. I learned about it only later. So when my husband passed away, I did do it. I felt that, and you do it once doesn't mean that you can't do it again. They're very welcoming. They'll let you come as many times as you need to come. But it is a very respectful environment. It is a very safe place. You feel safe. when you're there. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, but just the information that is shared with you is also it's just, it gets you thinking. It really gets you out of that zone of feeling stuck, because you're starting to sort of use those juices in your head to start thinking, okay, oh, so it doesn't have to be this way, or oh, I didn't realize that this is what happens. Your body does go into fight or flight mode when you're grieving.
Yes.
So that is a reality. So, okay, my body's in fight or flight mode. I need to be kind to myself. I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm not going to be my own critic right now. I'm going to be kind to myself and see what I need right now and deal with that.
Yeah.
The other place is hospice.
Hospice.
A
Yeah.
lot of the hospice organizations um, have grief counseling as well.
Yeah, they do. I know when my middle son passed away, hospice was amazing, offering resources for even my other kids that were in grade
Yeah.
school at the time, really helping. It was like a horse camp or something that they took them to where they really, and all the kids there had a sibling that was terminally ill. So it was really, again, helps you realize that you're not the only one. You're normal, if you will, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that yeah, I'm a huge fan of hospice. That's for sure. So I appreciate you bringing that one up. So, well, Asmita, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I'm definitely going to link that grief share into this podcast too, because I'd not heard of that. And it sounds like an amazing organization. So I'm going to
Sure.
check that out myself. And I learn something new from every guest I have on this show. It's always like I sit here and take my notes and whatever, but yeah. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for having me. And I
Thank you for listening to this episode of Good Grief. To hear more about my personal story, please pick up a copy of the book, The Spider Killer, a memoir of trauma, tragedy, and survival. You can find the book on Amazon and Kindle.